Phil, are you on?
Yes, I am.
Thank you.
Okay. Then I think we can get started. Is this thing live?
Yep.
Great. Thank you everyone for joining us. We're going to go ahead and get started. I'll quickly go through the agenda just so that, well, you could all see this, but in case the agenda is a little bit too much of an eye chart, I'll read through it quickly. We're going to start with the approval of last week's minutes. Then we'll move into stakeholder comments. We'll have a 20-minute period for public comment from 5:55 to 6:15. Then we'll discuss administration proposals, and I think there's some information as well that administration is going to provide, followed by budget committee discussions and deliberations, and then we'll have motions and voting, and we will adjourn at 7:25 so that you can have a lengthy 5-minute break before the board meeting. Any questions before we proceed? Great. Would someone care to make a motion regarding the approval of last week's minutes?
I'd like to make a motion.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That carries unanimously. Well, let's have some stakeholder comments. You prefer Bobby or Robert?
Doesn't matter, whichever one you prefer. Speaking of which, I'll take sirloin medium rare. I've worked with many of the board members over the year, many admin, faculty, and classified staff. I joke a lot, and there's a reason for that, and many of you can figure that out. But I got to tell you, it's hard. It's hard to stand here and make a quick joke to start with tonight, because this decision has not been easy. Two students sit in this meeting for the budget proposal, the development proposal, but you'll hear more about it in a little bit. But I know I will say that the one student votes fully for the proposal from the subcommittee against the admin's proposal. I'm going to say flat out, I am voting in the middle, in between for both, and part of that reason is they both have pros and cons. The concern I have is what's going to make it so we're not having such a difficult decision next year. And I don't know what that answer is, and there's no way I have the experience or training to do that. I also know that, and I'm trying to take up too much time. If I do, please tell me to be quiet. It's hard. We're given so much information in a short amount of time to try to figure out what to do with it. And all we want to do is find out, how do we fix it? We don't want to use Band-Aid tactics. I don't want to use that term, but it's one that's been tossed around. And we don't want to take things away from people. Where's the middle ground? I worry that one proposal is going to be really hard and tough, maybe a little too hard and tough. I worry one proposal looks really great on paper, but what happens if it doesn't come through and we're back worse than we were last year? I don't know. It's not a gamble I necessarily feel comfortable taking. But I don't have that decision. Y'all do. And I don't envy you. So, with that, that's my thoughts as, student stakeholder. It's hard. It's tough. We have classes. We have grades we have to maintain. And right now, this week, it has been the toughest week in 3 years as representing students. Good luck.
Thank you, Bobby. Is there a doctor in the house?
One or two of us, I think, so maybe more. Good evening. Thank you for the time. I wrote a long, detailed report this afternoon. I hope that most of you had a chance to see it and read it. And I'll hit some of the highlights for those of you who didn't, and then try to make clear our requests to the committee. We appreciate the extra time the week that you gave the Budget Development Subcommittee to try to reach consensus. I was optimistic a week ago that we could do so if everybody attempted to do so, and I believe we would have done so if everybody had attempted to do so. If you've read my report, you know that not everybody attempted to do so, and I'll elaborate that in a minute. But at this point, you have the administration proposal presented to you largely unchanged and completely unchanged through the Budget Development Subcommittee process. They were unwilling to agree to any changes within the Budget Development Subcommittee. We tried hard. The other stakeholder groups made a number of proposals. We tried to identify the key issues that would preclude support from any of the stakeholders up through the administration, the board, and the budget committee. And at the very end of the process, the administration finally made clear that they were simply not going to change their proposal at all. And so instead, you have what I'm calling a majority alternative proposal. It is very similar to the administration's proposal. As you see, there are only 11 items out of the entire proposal where this alternative proposal is proposing something different. This proposal was supported by the representatives of supported either with a thumb sideways or a thumbs up, I should say, with both representatives of the student body, both representatives of the classified union, as I expect they will confirm, both representatives of the faculty association. And there are 11 items in here that we believe the budget committee should request the administration to adopt into the administration's recommended budget. Some of them aren't that important. A few of them are simply some revenue items that help balance the budget that we have confidence in are reasonable measures. Some of them are very important. The proposals to cut the programs are hugely important for the students that want to take those programs, students who have already come here to prepare to qualify to take those programs, the faculty members who have spent much of their adult lives preparing for and teaching in these programs. There is no justification for cutting these programs in terms of a budget argument. The counseling programs, if you've read my communication, the program is not being cut to balance the budget. The program is being cut to free up money so that the college can expand the first year experience program. That's evident in the handout they gave you last week, where the exact same dollar is projected to be originally saved from counseling, cutting the counselors, is the exact same dollar, $230,200 that the college is proposing to spend on expanding the first year program. We do not believe that you should be cutting 2 faculty support positions in order to expand that program without at least a more thorough analysis about the efficacy of that program and what is the best way to proceed with that. We don't believe that it's appropriate to cut the philosophy position just so you can make a little bit more money by moving that work to part-time faculty and cutting Jeffrey Barldale's job, and in the meantime, cutting out the ability of Caroline and other faculty members who here, Jonathan and Dale, to simply work here. That's an absolutely inappropriate proposal for this college to be considering, and I beg you to overturn at least that. All right. Am I out of time? I have to yield the floor to my comrade here, but I'm simply asking you to respect the budget development process as it was intended, which was how most of us approached the work this year. The administration, for whatever reason, chose not to do so, and as a result, you have 2 proposals in front of you to make a choice from. We beg you to make the correct one. Thank you.
We want to be abundantly clear that the association is not here just to ask you to save jobs. In fact, even if all of the proposed cuts are approved, only 2 of the 10 faculty members, contracted faculty members who are slated for reduction will lose their jobs. This will tremendously reduce savings and only make other programs to which they transfer more expensive and most likely ready to be cut next year. There are, of course, significant impacts on part-time faculty and their displacement as a result of the cuts. There is another option. We urge you to accept the majority proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have we do.
No.
Thank you for your time on behalf of the classified. From the perspective of the classified staff, we are having difficulty putting into words a response that really accurately reflects such a wide range of thoughts, beliefs, emotions, and truths. It would have been a lot easier for all of us if the administration had just told you and the budget subcommittee last week that they were satisfied with their budget proposal and that we were not going to be changing anything. That would have saved us a whole week of time. It would have also saved us some grief, anxiety, in addition to lost time. The committee was only told an important piece of that information during the last 15 minutes of the last meeting. You could have actually voted last week and been done, but here we are. Instead, we worked through all of the unresolved budget items. We obtained some new information, worked through some deep discussions, but we were really not working towards a consensus budget. That idea was doomed after our last meeting on May 9th. We could have only have achieved a consensus budget if the rest of the budget development subcommittee members had really agreed to the administration proposal. We had pretty much a very nice and robust discussion about the open management positions. I think we all agreed that it was important to support students in filling part or all of those management positions in enrollment and student financial services. I appreciate the information received today from Academic and Student Affairs about those positions. This data would have been really helpful for our discussions, but we only asked for it today. We're still waiting for a release of the final product for the redesign committee of what that particular area is going to look like, which includes an org chart. But this is a very important piece to our classified staff as it directly affects them. Budget reductions in general put the unions in a very awkward role of staff advocacy and not being the one to say, hey, cut us. Students are in a position of wanting to maintain adequate access to quality education and at the same time, keep that education affordable. Management, not being a union representative group, play an important role in their perspective and advocacy. However, they're in an interesting advocacy for fellow managers while trying to appear to support the administration. The students have stepped up and offered some real unique perspectives and ideas through student fees to save important items that are important to them, such as academic programs, mental health counseling, and the health clinic. From the classified perspective, we've taken on a lot, as many of our colleagues have taken advantage of our early separation agreements. These employees carried on an enormous amount of work and amount of institutional knowledge that may or may not have been transferred to others. Since only about 1/3 of those positions have been funded, that has shifted the workload up, down, and across the organization. Many things are getting left undone. One example is our telecommunications position in IT. This position may actually have been taken for granted for many years. Virginia, prior to her retirement, worked in this position, ensured that the phone on your desk would work, that the features were added, that you actually use long distance, and that the billing was done. This position was posted, the interview committee interviewed the prospective employees, then the funding was pulled. Currently, there are 5 people, including a contractor, covering all aspects of this job, while job tickets for service keep growing. This position is a level 13 position, and all of the staff assigned to do the other parts of this job actually are paid at a higher level. Another example are the important positions in the Career Center. In the updated administrative budget, there is funding for 1 position to be retained, but that breaks up this very efficient team of 4. It's not a big group, but one of the most effective Lane teams. This team delivers career support and training in addition to providing numerous services commonly found in enrollment and student financial services. When there are no windows open or no one able to answer the phones, students visit the Career Center for help. This team has helped hundreds of students and helped them be successful professionally and academically. Now this team is targeted for a breakup. The deficit is real, no doubt, but we seem to have a difference of opinion on how to go about closing the gap. The majority report that we support, tries to balance the budget while maintaining contracted staff levels. We tried to maintain programs for students, and we tried to look to the future for growing programs and ideas to help the college really move forward. We've offered you hours of testimony, documents, and personal stories. You have a lot of information before you, and we now look to you to make the difficult choices. And we also concur with the support of the majority report. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. On behalf of the Management Steering Committee, thank you. My name is Brett Roulette, co-chair of MSC. This budget process has been the most difficult one I've been a part of in my 9 years in my position at the college. This is the second year for me as a member of the Budget Development Subcommittee, and the first time I've been part of a committee that has not reached consensus. I, like all members of the subcommittee, had hoped to reach consensus. Already?
No.
But I don't think it was possible this year. And I'd like to speak briefly what kept us from that final 10%. The easiest thing that MSC reps could have done yesterday would have been to support the alternative budget. Like past years, we could have sent you a Band-Aid budget, one that would get us through to the next year, but do little to address the budget and enrollment reality the college is facing. Managers have listened closely to the board's conversations over the past year and the direction given to President Spieldy and the budget team. It's our belief that the board wants to see a budget that tightens the belt, one that reduces our overall size to reflect a smaller student body, and moves us away from a reliance on one-time funds. While we remain hopeful that Salem will find a way to increase revenue and bring additional support to community colleges, we're also realists and have seen attempts voted down at the ballot time and time again. Just last year, there were conversations at this table about how we could delay some of the tough decisions because of what Measure 97 was going to do for us. We all know how that turned out, so here we are again. So back to the question, do you want another Band-Aid budget this year or do you want something different? That's what I believe was the question that kept us from reaching a consensus budget. It sure wasn't for a lack of trying. We just had a fundamental disagreement on what we were working towards accomplishing. I've said over and over in budget development that we're the community's college and we need to look at the local needs we're meeting. Are our programs serving local needs, or are we pipelines to other employers in other corners of the state? If it's the latter, we must ask how this serves the residents of our district and fulfills the college mission. One of the most challenging aspects of the budget process for me, and I'm sure for you, has been all the numbers you receive. Whether it's budget projections or employment forecasts, it's very easy to get overwhelmed by the different sets of numbers. Often the numbers from the budget team and from stakeholder groups are in different solar systems, nowhere close to one another. And in these instances, I have to say I continue to have high confidence in the information received from the college's team. Year after year, they give projections within 0.5 of 1%, and they receive annually 5-star audits backing up their work. It's been a tough year for managers on campus. Morale's lower than I've seen in my time here. We've consistently been targeted as a group and as individuals during this budget process. We've listened to testimony and conversations at the table regarding proposals that seem to target only one group, such as last week's discussion on whether we should come back with cuts to management tonight. I'm not arguing that compensation shouldn't be looked at, but it's not the lane way, nor does it come close to filling our core values when we single out one group. We need to do this differently in the future. I'd ask that the board in the future provide more guidance to the Budget Development Subcommittee. Should we be making curriculum decisions? Should we be making specific staffing decisions? What's our role? The MSC recommends that you support the administrative proposal. Thank you all for your time to the college and the community.
Thank you. We'll move forward now to the public comment portion. Let me see if I can get this right. Board Policy 320 states that the Budget Committee may not respond directly to any issues raised, but will take comments into consideration. Speakers will be limited to 3 minutes each and may not yield their time to other speakers. Maximum time allotted for public comment is 20 minutes. And our first speaker is Ellen Osterkamp, or is that Osterkamp, followed by Jeffrey Borrowdale and Naoto Iwashita.
It's Osterkamp. But it's close. You're close. Can I go? Ready? All right. So as you heard, my name is Ellen Osterkamp, and I'm a part-time instructor in art history. And I'm here to ask that you do not put the full-time position on hold for the 17-18 school year. The administration states that in holding this hire, art history will be filled in by full-time and part-time faculty. I'm here as a part-time instructor defending this program because our lone full-time faculty member completed their teach out at the end of winter term, creating a falsehood in the administration's budget. We have been and will continue to be without full-time representation if the administration keeps this hire on hold. Currently, art history is offering 5 classes this summer and 9 in the fall, all taught by part-time. This course planning was completed between the dean of our division and myself, resulting in a part-time instructor doing the work of a full-time instructor. What will continue to happen to course planning for the years to come if there are no full-time instructors to plan it? How do we grow as a program if there is no one there to grow it? How do we invest in our students if the school is unwilling to invest in us? We are a program that term after term has high enrolled, low-cost courses. Our fall schedule includes 2 new online courses. These courses are capped at 50 students apiece. If all of our courses fill for the fall, which they traditionally do, we have the potential of reaching 402 students without the support of a full-time faculty member. Yes, we can teach it as part-time members, and we have. But what happens when our other jobs, and yes, we all have other jobs, get in the way of our courses here at LCC? What happens to the students who fall through the cracks because we don't have the time to invest in them when we don't have a full-time instructor to back us up? In 3 years, we have served 2,700 students, creating 3,800 enrollments, with 65% of those enrollments qualifying as transferable courses towards a transferable degree, which you'll see in the handout. A full-time instructor must plan yearly schedules which best suit their student population. We serve business students from the U of O or who are transferring to the U of O with our Asian art courses, which are 98% enrolled every term. There is no administrator for art history. Who will be left to coordinate our community outreach? Who will be left to serve our College Now faculty to certify them in art history for our high schools? Who will be left to develop credit courses to offer to high school connections and the community? Who will be left to plan courses at our downtown campus to bring the community into LCC? We are in the throes of developing more and more online courses, but again, who will be left to develop them if the college refuses to allow for one full-time faculty member in this program? From last fall to this next one, we have reduced our face-to-face offerings from 6 courses to 4 and have increased our online courses from 3 to 5, increasing our potential capacity, like I said, from 358 to 402. This number can only increase with our increase of online courses, and we are attempting to meet the needs of our students, but we are only being shackled by the time that our part-time faculty is unable to give. Thank you.
Thank you.
At the last board meeting, we heard attacks on manager salaries, and I think with some justification, we had a defense from board members that said quality managers cost more, and we have to offer a salary that's something that's going to be appealing to quality people. Does that principle apply to faculty? Does it apply to experienced faculty, full-time faculty with an investment in the college beyond the term-to-term and class-to-class commitment of part-timers? Now, we do have some wonderful part-time faculty who are all going to lose their jobs. Carolyn Lundquist in particular has been wonderful and is a great outreach to the community. Last night she did a community philosophy circle downtown. They had a packed house. She's part of a new philosophy in the high schools program. That's bringing students to Lane. She's great advertising for the college. She's going to bring in the enrollment that we need. I see in the budget there's only $50,000 for online expansion. I think that's a low number. And I think people like me, whose assignment is half online, are an asset to the college and can be used to grow an online degree program at Lane. Our religion program has had some dips in enrollment. I teach 1 religion class per year. So it makes no sense to cut the philosophy religion position, my full-time position, because I happen to teach 1 religion class and those numbers happen to be a little less. Just ask the administrative dean to reduce those sections. That's what you should do as regular governance at the department level, not cut full-time faculty. And I think if we continue down this road, we're going to see enrollment continue to drop and continue this downward spiral. Thank you.
Thank you. Odo, followed by Bobby and Jen McKinney.
I am not here for myself, but for all the students at LCC. I am ready for the worst case scenario since I am all set to take online classes at Portland Community College. But many students are not ready. Yesterday, one of the students at Trio STEM asked me how to apply for the honors program. I told him how to apply, but I also had to tell him that the college is considering eliminating it, and he was very disappointed. The proposals that have been made by the management require sacrifices by faculty and students, but not by the management. They blame the state government for not giving enough money, but have they really done everything they could have done to get more money from the state? They blame the historically low unemployment rate for the rapid decrease of the number of the students, but have they really done everything they could have done to recruit students? They did a major renovation of the center building 2 years ago, but was that really necessary? Ultimately, they are responsible for this budget crisis, and yet they are trying to make the most vulnerable and powerless pay the price, the students. If all the proposals pass, we students will have to pay more for our service. And the worst part is that those proposals are based on an extremely insulting false assumption that we all students will just take something else in order to fulfill our degree requirements. I urge the members of the Board of Education to consider cutting the salaries and position of the LCC management. Please make them pay their fair share. Please don't let the powerful bully the powerless. Please don't let the powerful abuse their power. Thank you.
Thank you. Bobby?
Yeah. Hi, round two. I wanted to speak in the public comment to really try to drive in this point. We just had student elections, and we had the record lowest in the history of the college. The students at this point are getting to be very disinterested in anything as far as this campus. It's getting very hard. I've been working to represent students for the past 3 years. Students are hurting, and I wanted to speak to that on students on this budget and really advise you to really think about that, about the students, no matter which way you choose or which way you suggest, whether that's one or A, B, or a mix of the two to make C, whatever you want to do. Or you make up D, make up your own, I don't care. But students right now need a little bit of care and love in those proposals, whatever they are. So I'm not going to take up any more time. I'm sorry. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Jen, followed by Cindy Manning and Carolyn Lundquist.
Hi, my name is Jen McKinney. In 2002, LCC had the second lowest tuition in Oregon from the Registered Guard article from February 23rd, 2002. For at least the 3 previous years, LCC would have needed cuts of $2 million a year to balance the budget. Instead, the board used reserve funds. Please keep that in mind. Reserve funds were used in 2002. They were also used last year. Next, let's see. This is from March 24th, 2002. The schedule now calls for the budget to be printed in late April with the first budget committee meeting May 1st. So I'm really hoping that next year we could consider having this discussion a little bit earlier. Next, from April 11th, 2002, faculty members at Lane Community College are offering an alternative spending plan they believe would save the college's education programs from budget cuts and say administration estimates overstate the size of a projected shortfall. Faculty has brought over the years several proposals. Please listen to the faculty. They've been doing it for years and they want to have solutions. And after the cuts were made for 2002, in September of 2002, there were complaints. Already some students have reported being unable to get into any classes they wanted for fall term and have to settle for second and third choices. And Mattson said many who wanted to attend Lane as full-time students will have to settle for part-time status, which affects their financial aid package. Please realize what's going to happen this fall if you cut programs. There will be students affected financially because they can't get into their programs and they didn't know they couldn't, so now they're going to be down to half-time. And they're going to lose part of their funding. Faculty takes more and more cuts every year. This is from 2009, June 1st. We were asked to engage in the shared sacrifice in 2008 and in 07 and in 06, he said. So we're making the point that while there's a financial crisis, the college's budgeting process has put us in a financial crisis every year. This is from 2009, and it sounds just like it could have been written yesterday. There was some worry in the trend in 2010. By 2010, Lane was the most expensive community college in Oregon. Quote, altogether, this will put basic tuition at the 2-year school at $83 per credit hour. Lane currently is the only Oregon community college with basic tuition above $80. Referencing the Longhouse, I just want to talk about the intent of the Longhouse. This was local elder Frank, this is from 11/29/10. Local elder Frank Merrill suggested the project in the early 90s. Spildley said that the Longhouse is important because it offers Native American students a way to connect to their culture and provides a window to that culture for non-Indians. College enrollment among American Indians is one of the lowest of any ethnic group, and the difficulty of adjusting to college life is cited as a major factor. Please keep this in mind. Next, experts weighed in on July 3rd, 2011. Patrick Callan, Executive Director of the National Center for Public Policy and Higher Education, said, raising tuition at a time when family income is stagnating, that's not a way to reach those goals. We're making short-term decisions to get us out of the pickle we're in that are really compromising our way to reach these long-term goals. I have so many more that are highlighted. I'm just going to leave them right over here, and you can read them, and please keep them in mind.
Thank you. Cindy Manning, and then Carolyn Lundquist, please.
So I'm Cindy Manning, and I'm speaking to you not only as a part-time faculty person and an instructional specialist here at Lane, but also as someone who's had years of experience facilitating project teams in healthcare to redesign healthcare, serving as a team and leadership development specialist for a project that was featured in PBS's documentary Remaking of American Medicine, and also working with the American Academy of Family Physicians in their practice enhancement program as a principal, creator of that program, one of them, and one of the principal faculty in that program. So as we've heard from some other people, that we know that cutting programs on campus results in fewer students for all programs, and it affects all of us. I want to speak to you just a little bit about the specifics in the health professions department where I'm currently working part-time. So it's our early training and our early experience in our career field is that we develop our instincts and our intuitions, and that's where they begin to take root. So the practices we develop then are critical. A key point to remember here is healthcare is a team sport. I'm going to relate to that in a minute. So as a college, we're responsible for the shaping of those instincts. We're responsible for our students' assumptions that they come into their career field with. And we want to move them into a direction so when they enter into their profession, they not only succeed in getting hired, but they also succeed as they grow through their career. And that will reflect well on us. So we know that the training they receive here has a lifelong impact on them and a long impact in the community at large. And we know also in healthcare particular that these students have an impact in the well-being of many, many people, hundreds if not thousands of people. Okay. Back to the team sport. We know that students need to learn and practice collaboration and team dynamics in order to succeed well in healthcare. That's part of their basic education. A few weeks ago, I watched a class do this. I watched a class of respiratory therapist students and nursing students work on a simulated code. We had a patient that was a mannequin, and it was going into cardiac arrest. And these students worked together to bring that patient back. This simulation was a taste of the dramas that they will be facing in the future. And it offered all of the tenseness and the fear and the anxiety that, or a taste of that they'll be facing in the years ahead. They worked together and they had a good outcome. They learned firsthand in that experience how essential collaboration and team is in healthcare. You cannot work in a silo.
Thank you.
Don't cut our tea.
Good evening. My name is Carolyn Lundquist. Let's do some philosophy in 3 minutes or less. After last week's meeting, it occurred to me that in all the hours of discussion and testimony I've heard over the past few weeks, the word justice has seldom, if ever, been used. Now, that struck me as odd because what we are dealing with here is at heart an issue of justice. So let's talk about justice. In his masterpiece, A Theory of Justice, the philosopher John Rawls introduced an idea that fast was recognized as one of the most important in the whole history of philosophy, and that is today one of the most beloved. More importantly, it's an idea that we here at Lane need now today. The idea is a simple thought experiment, and it goes a little something like this. Imagine that you have the power to create an ideal society from scratch. Every aspect of this society structure is up to you. Include whatever institutions you prefer, craft the laws as you see fit, and determine how they will be enforced, distribute the wealth, resources, and opportunities as you like, and determine what degree of inequality of both power and wealth is acceptable. Your freedom is almost without limits, but there's a catch. You must design it all from behind a veil of ignorance. And what that means is that once your work is complete, you will be inserted at random into that society that you have created, and there you must live out whatever life has been assigned to you. Now, Rawls believed that any rational person who performed this little thought experiment would conclude that an objectively just society must adequately address, indeed prioritize, the needs of the most vulnerable members. After all, no rational person would will herself into the kind of life a vulnerable person lives in an unjust society, a life of suffering, exploitation, a life devoid of basic human dignity. I urge you to step behind the veil of ignorance, reject the feeling of entitlement that is the most aggressive moral cancer of our species. Remember that but for a few accidents of fate, you could be the student whose life is today in turmoil because she may lose her program, the veteran professor whose life's work could be cut short without just cause, the passionate instructor who, having already sacrificed a living wage, finds that her job is nonetheless at risk. But for the accidents of fate, you could be the most vulnerable stakeholder in this situation. So step behind the veil of ignorance and ask yourself which version of LCC you could will yourself to be randomly inserted into. The fundamentally unjust version reflected in the budget presented to you by our administration, or the decidedly more just version reflected in the majority proposal presented by our other more vulnerable stakeholder groups. Use your position to contribute to the net amount of justice in this decidedly unjust world of higher education, and in so doing contribute to the net amount of justice in this decidedly unjust world. Thank you.
Thank you. I suppose, Brian, that it's your privilege to follow that. And we have 10 minutes to hear this, and I'm sure you'll talk fast.
Thank you, and I do recognize that as a privilege.
I apologize. We have 20 minutes allotted. No, it is 10 minutes.
It's 10 hours. Dawn has just handed out the administration balancing proposal summary, and I want to go over that and look at the changes from April 26th to our May 17th proposal. We have some updates to the proposal we added in our March projection. If we look at the top line there, I'm going to go down the May 17th column of $725,500. We are looking at expense reductions of $585,000 in materials and services, $650,000 in part-time classified, $1,268,000 in part-time faculty. This number has been reduced for part-time backfill to help with make the adjustment for the funded contracted CIT faculty position that was added back in. We are withholding $650,000 of the capital outlay. We are holding $1,151,000 of vacancies open. This number is also changed due to the contracted CIT position added back in. There's a staggered hiring component that we've added. This will allow some savings as we don't hire all of the positions exactly on July 1st, but we will move some of these positions to October and January hires. Reorganization, this number has moved a bit. We've added $23,400 to support the faculty vacancy option for the Multicultural Center reorganization. This gives that group the capacity after they work on a proposal internally to add a faculty position if that's what the group decides. Transfers have stayed the same. We are also reducing our general fund investment from $325,000 to $230,300 for the Oregon Promise. I do want to mention that the board approved scaling up the Oregon Promise in March, and this wasn't a part of changing in the budget process. We also have the first year scale up of $94,800. In the categories of program and service reductions, there's $101,000 in the counseling program. This reassigns faculty to teach human services and other courses for which they are certified. Again, those 2 faculty members will land in other teaching assignments. There's been a lot of testimony and a lot of good work by the faculty in early childhood education. We are able to, in this budget, maintain that program. We are reducing the expenditure by $135,000. ECE will continue. There is a reduction of $28,100 in geographic information systems. We are suspending that program for 1 year while they go through a program review. The grants position will be eliminated, $129,000. The honors program will be eliminated in this proposed budget. For $100,000, religion and philosophy eliminated, $136,000. Respiratory care, 1 faculty would be reassigned to teach in health professions courses for which they're certified, savings of $201,000. Successful Aging Institute reduction, $55,000. Reducing the, eliminating the watershed science technician program, $111,000. And in the workforce category, we will maintain 1 project specialist to support limited career center functions. That's the shift in that number from $394,000 to $314,000. Our revenue additions include $1.1 million in tuition, $1,239,000 in student fees. Earlier tonight, we heard that there was $50,000 to be invested in the in online growth. I just want to catch that. That's in the budget. That's in the report that came out of the Budget Development Committee. Our proposal provides $325,000 for OER in online expansion. Program growth, we're capturing $610,000 and additional revenues of $375,000. On page 2 of this document, there's a summary of what I just went over in terms of the recommended program and service reductions at the top of the page, and all of the changes that happen to the actual budget within the funds and budgetary programming. And I'm available for and to answer any questions.
Do we have questions for Brian? And thank you, Brian.
I have one clarifying question from, it was one of the emails that came through today for GIS, for placing it on hold, but then there was, I'm sorry, I don't remember the specifics in the email. It was talking about current students and if we would have to do, and I was just trying to figure out, you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, I do. And yes, we would have to do a teach out. We have some students that need to finish a certificate that we would need to offer. Plus there's a couple of existing degrees that where there's some required courses.
Other questions or concerns for Brian?
Brian, with the revenue additions you've got listed on here, and for if they don't occur, what contingencies, what options do you have to rebalance?
And that's an excellent question. So everything in this budget is based on the fees and tuition being applied to fall term. Registration for fall term starts on Monday. There's approximately $800,000 between fall tuition and fees that we wouldn't receive in fall term if we were not able to come to a consensus and get board approval later for the fees and tuition. At that point, we would have to go back in and look at further program and service reductions to mitigate that gap.
All right, thank you.
Just a question. I understand that board member Phil Carrasco wanted to be on the phone. Is he on the phone now?
He was on the phone earlier. Phil, are you still on the phone?
Yes, I am.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
I have a couple questions about this, but I don't know who. Should I just?
Sure.
Okay. So for the majority proposal, I'm unclear on the college-wide wait list and how the 50,000 is generated. Anybody? Can
So let me ask the committee before we address that question. Do we want to accept answers from the audience? Because I don't know that we would have that. Want to make a motion to that effect?
I would like to make a motion to accept comments and answers from the audience.
Second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Those opposed? Phil, did you vote?
Yes, I was nice.
Okay, then I think it's unanimous. Great. So, Adrian, would you like to answer that question?
Thank you. The college-wide waitlist proposal would involve implementing waitlists for all departments. At this point in time, not all departments have wait lists, and the association has a commitment to negotiate this matter with the college. The $50,000 figure represents less than 0.25% enrollment. We have been doing some research, in particular, Alan is here. He did some research that he shared with the Budget Development Subcommittee last week and this week about the number of students who are purged from the wait list at the beginning of each term. And there were just a little bit over 300 students purged at the beginning of spring term. So we believe that implementing the wait list college-wide will allow those students to get into classes and not be turned away. It's also possible through the bargaining process to negotiate changes to the existing wait list process that could impact the way that it's implemented. But the very first step would be to just simply implement it college-wide. It's already used in some departments, but not all. For instance, it's not used in social science, a rather large department. Thanks.
Thank you.
I'd like to say something about that if I could. Sure. I don't think anyone is opposed to having waitlist function. In fact, almost 3 years ago, we signed an MOA to have a discussion about that as a trade-off for a change in something that we bargained in enrollment capacity. It was on the Labor Management Committee for several months. It was never, it never made it to the top of the list. And so here we are. It hasn't been implemented. First of all, this has to be negotiated, and there would have to be other changes in the contract other than just adopting waitlist in order to produce any money. So we don't believe that the 50,000, I mean, you're taking a bet that we will actually, number one, negotiate it and that it will produce money. And we don't believe that a budget based on money that is not certain is what our board expects from us.
Thank you. Other questions for administration specifically, or should we veer into our general discussion and deliberation? Oh, I'm sorry, Tony?
No, I'm agreeing to the latter.
Okay.
I'll raise my hand for the
Then let's
latter.
do that. So, here we are.
So, year after year in this budget committee, we kind of get bogged down in what comes across as different data, and we're it leaves us questioning what we know. I think sometimes but I think there's a few things that we do know that we need to address first of all before we get into other questions. We know that the board directed this administration to look at program cuts back in July. The entire campus community knew that. They knew the direction, the 13 directions that the board gave the administration in developing a budget this year. We knew that there was at least a $10 million deficit in December. We know that we have a process, or we have a system in place. I'm not going to say we have a process. We have a system in place that allows equal number of voices from across campus to present proposals. My understanding of that process from working inside of it and my 10 years now on the board is that that process is supposed to inform the administration's proposals. What we've allowed over the last few years is that process to start on the day the administration's proposal was introduced, not in September, and not demand that it starts in September. There are maybe some really great things on here: Z degrees, maybe a college-wide wait list. If we could put it on a list to get done, that may bring us revenue. But I don't think we budget on a may bring us revenue. We have a system in place that's to address these issues, and it's not really designed to be done in 2 weeks from the time a budget's released to the time we have to make a decision, 2 to 4 weeks, right? And so we get bogged down in 11 line items from a 180 pound page budget that tells us that budget's wrong, even though year after year we're told that budget is within 0.5% of their projections. I think most of us around this table and most of us in this room rally against a state law that mandates anything over 2% discrepancy it must be returned to taxpayers. We're 4 times better than that at this campus in our projections. We have to address the cognitive dissonance between what is actually happening and what sometimes we assume could maybe happen in a week and a half after a year-long budget process. I think we have a gut-wrenching budget. $10.7 million is not easy to cut. There was a point made about this being a discussion of justice. I think, unfortunately, the discussion of justice has been lost at the ballot box and in Salem for years and years and years. We are just having a discussion of balancing a budget. That's where I'm at.
Matt?
I'm wondering if the rationale that was presented to us this budget cycle and in previous budget cycles around cutting programs resulting in a net or a neutral change, a net zero change. I'm wondering where that data comes from. When we cut a program and we're expected to say that the students won't go elsewhere, or the students on one hand, or the students will just simply take other classes, I'm wondering, as you sift through the numbers and you hear the testimony and you hear the arguments, where that data comes from. Is there any data to support that if a program is cut, students stay? Or is that a hope and a prayer?
Or that they go.
Right.
The data for that.
Right. Well,
sorry. Rosie?
I just would like to reiterate a comment that I made at our meeting last week, which is I feel personally that what we have been listening to in some measure is dueling crystal balls, Matt. We are expected to believe counter arguments to the recommendations being made by administration, that their logic is faulty, their data is flawed, et cetera, et cetera. But I don't necessarily recognize that the contradictory data has any more certainty to it. I think to some extent there are a lot of projections that are being made, and I think the projections that we requested were conservative ones. I just would like to make one other point as long as I have the opportunity, and that is one person who testified indicated that making changes in course offerings, program offerings, and so forth in order to shift resources from one program in the college to a different program in the college is a bad thing. But I submit that is precisely what I've been asking for 5 years on the college's board. The budget time is not just a time to focus on closing a $10 million gap. It's also a time we have a responsibility to be looking at the college's mission, the role it's fulfilling in the community, in the immediate district that it serves, not necessarily the state, but the district it serves, and to understand where demand is increasing for service from Lane Community College and where it appears to be decreasing, and be responsive to that in terms of the finite amount of resources that we have to work with. So I don't necessarily see realigning course offerings at Lane to perhaps be more responsive to what students appear to be demanding within our limitations to be a bad thing.
And Kevin, did you have a comment? Were you asking earlier? I'm sorry.
Jason, yeah, you were.
Oh, well, yeah, just to the point about how accurate these predictions of student retention are, I would assume that if this were a new metric that was being used to propose the budget, you would mention something about that. I feel like you've probably used similar assumptions for budgets in the past, and to as far as how accurate then we could expect that to be, I would say we should look at how much past predictions have matched up with the attained values, right? So if we're talking about past budgets being within 0.5% accuracy, as long as those budgets were based on the same assumptions, I would feel safe in following those assumptions this time. Does that make sense?
So another way to put that would be what is the accuracy of predictions of student enrollment? We've heard repeated comment getting to be a little bit like a drumbeat in my ear about the accuracy of the accounting precision, the accounting predictions, which is certainly something important and appropriate point of institutional pride. Have the enrollment projections been equally accurate? In fact, when we look year on year on year, there is an enrollment deficit. And what would it look like rhetorically if the college were challenged to balance its enrollment rather than balancing its budget? Would that be a just approach to running a community college in a different world? In this world, the difference between the subcommittee majority proposal and the administration proposal is less than the vaunted 0.5% of the budget. So some of the rhetoric about the difficulty of cuts and the $10 million gap and so on, I mean, there are other things in the budget that are tough. And to some degree, we could be grateful that we're not being walloped over the head about fee and tuition increases, which are a big part of balancing this budget. So let's pause and be grateful for that as people sitting up here with this this somewhat terrible responsibility. But moving forward again, I fail to see, I believe that we have asked good questions. I believe that that answers have been provided in a well-intentioned way, but I have not seen evidence that tells me that the cost of the majority proposal in retaining programs is in any way decisive to the future of this college or even really to the balancing of this budget. That we're talking about such a small difference between these proposals that to a 99.63% level, there is agreement on the budget, that the budget is not being debated. And to 99.63% level, the administration management proposal is being accepted as such. And we're arguing over this last little piece. I think that is an important argument, but let's understand the scale of it, and let's make a philosophical choice about that scale. To me, when we see that the difference, the cost of cutting socially valuable programs that are valuable to significant numbers of people in the different stakeholder groups in this community, to me, when the cost of cutting those programs, when the human and educational and community cost of cutting those programs is so vividly evidenced to us, and the impact on the overall budget is mathematically insignificant, the choice is clear to maintain those programs and pick up on the things Tony's talking about and that Mary's talking about and that Rosie's talking about starting earlier, moving forward, doing more things. Bringing, I'm sure the board spends a lot of time on the enrollment issue, but what is the precision of, anyway, it almost feels to me like, do we have to draw blood to feel like we're balancing the budget, to feel like we're making the hard decisions to ensure the future of the college? Don't worry. Most of the $10 million, 95% of the $10 million is drawing blood all over the place. There's plenty of blood being drawn. The majority proposal has shown us a way that we can save a few valuable programs within the rounding error of this budget. So that's certainly what I would support at this point.
I think there's little question. I think there's little question that in this budgetary environment, there's going to be plenty of blood, and I think it's going to be some of our dearest blood, which makes this job difficult, to say the least. And I make no pretense and make no claim as to which side of that veil I stand on. I don't know that any of us does. What I think is that we're talking about two related spheres, drawing a Venn diagram in the air, because that's how I roll. One of them is the numbers in front of us, the proposed budget, on which in 40 minutes or so we should vote and see if we recommend it or if we do not. The second is the process by which we arrived here. And I think I'm hearing, and certainly there have been many comments, public comments and otherwise, suggesting that that process could be refined. Can we refine it in time to do something different this year? It seems that we're out of time. Could we do something different in future years? It feels to me as though, and this is beyond my purview as a budget committee member, but it seems to me as though that would head off, that would make this job a little less difficult, would make the outcomes a little bit more palatable or less unpalatable in the future. Please.
I believe we have a very frustrating job in front of us. We have a very difficult decision to make today, or beyond, if that is how the vote goes. I think that, excuse me, I'm trying to articulate how to say what I'm trying to say. I think that if we had an opportunity to view and deliberate and discuss the budget earlier than when we received it here, I think that that would have been incredibly useful and helpful. We saw a lot of different budgetary proposals brought forward after the original budget was proposed. And I recognize that some of the programs and opportunities are there as reactionary, not preliminary. So I'm understanding that. However, in order to start off this process, I believe that we should start early and strong rather than later and scattered. We've had a budget that has changed every meeting and every week until this day, and even today there is a separate budget that is being brought forward as well. And I think that we need to be able to have an opportunity to inspect and view and prepare ourselves for this. Can't tell you how many late nights I spent up 2 a.m. reading the budget, which is not exactly what I planned on doing in my life, but there we are. I want to also really impress upon those who are here and those who are watching that I have a great deal of respect for everyone here at the board and everyone here on the budget committee as well. I know that we've all had our own struggles and issues with this budget, and that we're all fighting our own personal issues with this. And so whatever decision comes to bear, know that the discussions, the disagreements, and the arguments are all for the best of LCC. And that's where it is. So.
Susie?
Just on timing, as far as getting a look at the budget and maybe who the we are, because the board's been looking and rather listening to presentations about budget almost, we listen almost all year long. So, and it becomes more and more refined as we get closer to that drop dead date, which is apparently today, without getting to a place where if a decision is not made, it impacts the less money that we'll have to put forth on whatever it is that we do, beginning at the end of after today. Anyway, the timing for that. So the board is here. The budget committee comes in the last month or so, acts as an advisory group with the board to pass forward a recommendation, and the board makes that final decision on accepting the budget or not accepting the budget. So we hold public meetings. I suppose anybody who's on the budget committee is welcome to show up and listen to that presentation ahead of time. If we need to adjust our sails and how inclusive we can be to the budget committee along the way during the year, you know, we can take that up and make that decision. What I've struggled with is, I think if I were part of the leadership when it comes to management or classified or faculty or any employee group, that are students that are a part of this, I think it's flat out impossible to ask those people in November or December or October, whenever it is that we begin getting projections, to come forth and say, hey, you know what? I've got 15 employees that work in the chicken coop here at the college, and let's just can those people. Let's just have them go away, and that'll make this amount of money, come into the rest of the budget and help make up the deficit. You don't ask people to do that. It puts people in such a precarious position when they're supposed to be teaching the things, and I pick chicken coop because I do not want to get personal, but the places where people actually come to work every single day, we want them to be able to do the best job that they can do every single day. And trying to deal with huge budget cuts, it's horrendous for all the employees at this college, for all the students at this college, for anybody that's here to be coming across with some cavalier attitude that we just volunteer somebody else. Most probably volunteering people that are more vulnerable than we are, than I am, in making these recommendations. So what happens is we get it in the last month and we have to deal with the fact that these are the difficult decisions that have to be made. I'm all for doing as much as we can, as early as we can, but I think the practical sense of where we might make those cuts, if that's a hard way to start off in September when you begin doing your job.
Thanks, Susie. Melanie, I think you look like you want to jump in there.
I do. I actually have some more questions about the majority proposal that I'm trying to understand. This one actually is for either Brian or Mary on the counseling one. So the proposal to add another $750 to the health clinic fee, and then the talk again about the insurance billing. Can you guys react to that? Because I'm not sure if that makes sense or doesn't make sense. I'm trying to understand that one a little bit more.
So I'm seeing this for the first time in this full proposal. This proposal wasn't shared with the whole budget development committee when it was sent out today. So we didn't get to see this. And I did talk to the health clinic director this afternoon, and no conversation had been had with the health clinic about the addition of this fee or potentially moving this forward. So I don't have a lot of due diligence for you as I don't we weren't really reached out to in this particular proposal.
Can I correct the record on that? This was a student proposal made yesterday. Brian was in the room with his mate and was discussed at some length. Was Assistant Jim's response?
I was not copied on the email that went out this afternoon, and the health clinic director was not notified. Those are the two statements I made, and Jim is correct. I was in the meeting yesterday.
Mr. Chair, may I ask that this body should, in my opinion, do everything in our power to prohibit a he said, she said back and forth. It's not going to be productive, period. And if you have a comment or you're asked a direct question, I find myself guilty of this all the time. Please wait to be called on by the chair. Please.
I apologize.
So no need to apologize.
It's very difficult to sit here and to hear.
So I'm going to just cut off that comment
Thank
right
you, Jim,
now.
but
sir.
please,
Like,
please
seriously.
let's agree that going forward we'll have less back and forth.
Chair, can I jump in here?
Absolutely, Phil. We'll yield the floor to you.
Okay. So, I think we're all kind of saying similar things here. I do want to point out we did keep at it. We were listening. We've always, from the initiation of this process and even before, we've always been concerned about Lane Community College as a whole. And I think I can speak for my colleagues on the board as well. And based on that, we try to make the best decisions possible. We have a team assembled, thanks to Mary, to go ahead and look at our options. We heard a faculty, classified, and folks, and students. We heard everybody show a little bit of dissatisfaction with the findings. So we kept working to get to a place. I don't think anybody sat there and thought that the end product was going to be something everybody was going to be happy with. We were still not going to have it. So I am ready to make a decision based on the fact that I know we tried our best to come up with a viable solution within the time constraints that we have now. Now, looking forward, I do want to say a few things about what's even playing out just right before I started saying any of these words. There is a breakdown of communication clearly. And somebody's at fault here, and I think it's a shared problem, right? So, faculty, classified, students, management, we have to fix this communication problem. We're going to continue to have these problems. How in the hell are we coming up with different numbers and different narratives? We are all in this together. We're all facing it, okay? Now, I look forward to working with everybody as a board member, doing the best that I can so we get a jump on this. I want to be in that room, and I want to see where this communication is breaking down, because this is completely ridiculous. And instead of building, we're tearing down the very institution we profess to love. So we need to move forward now. And those are the last words I want to say. I have a lot of respect for everybody there. Everybody knows the way I operate. Everybody has 100% my respect the moment I meet them. Let's continue to show each other respect. We are in it together. We're trying to save our college and the future children and youth that are going to come to this college. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Rosie?
I would like to move that the Lane Community College District Budget Committee approve the 2017-2018 fiscal year budget as submitted by administration this evening, entitled Updated Proposed Budget May 17, 2017. I don't know if I can say for all funds totaling, whatever that says. I don't know if that's currently the number, Brian, but I am interested in getting a motion on the table because one of our number has an alternative meeting starting at 7 o'clock. I want him to be able to participate. So that's my motion. I'm looking
Second.
for a second.
Second.
I'm unclear what the motion is.
I didn't hear it.
I'm unclear what the exact motion is.
It's in front of you.
Yeah, just get out the piece of paper you have in your packet. Motion number 1, I move that the Lane Community College District Budget Committee approve the 2017-2018 fiscal year proposed budget. Brian, is that the budget that is reflected in updated proposed budget May 17? Okay, then that is the motion I'm making. Matt, you can read it. Thank you for the second.
And to clarify, that is as adjusted by staff and for all funds totaling $218,133,874. Is that, and that's the correct amount?
Yes. Yeah, Brian confirmed that.
Okay. And did we have a second?
We did. Yeah, second.
Those in favor?
No.
Discussion.
Okay, we can have discussion if you really want to. Kevin?
I'd move to amend the motion to add the words "and the budget committee."
It says budget committee in it. The motion has the words budget committee in
Community
it.
College Budget Committee.
Oh, I'm sorry. I got confused there for a minute. I want to add the words and the budget committee. I don't understand in the draft motion why there's an X in one parentheses and not in the other parentheses.
That was unclear to me as well.
Right. And
I think if we changed it, we would put the X next to the budget committee, because this hasn't been changed by the budget committee. This is the administration proposal that the motion is following. If we had come in and said we want to do this A, B, C, and D, and they came up with, then we would have selected that.
okay, so I'll just simply amend the motion to incorporate the majority subcommittee proposal, which modifies less than 0.5% of the administration budget.
Confused on that motion.
So he's moving. Yeah, there's no second.
I
So
think that's a separate motion, correct?
well, no, he can amend the motion to.
But there needs to be a second.
Yeah, it needs to be a second.
Could the gentleman repeat the motion, please?
I move to amend Rosie's motion to modify the proposed budget by the addition of the items in the so-called majority proposal.
Moving for a second.
Is there a second?
Second, for the sake of discussion.
Okay.
Second.
Discussion?
I don't actually understand the total numbers at the bottom of the page for the majority proposal. So I got my calculator out while I was sitting here on my phone, and they don't add up to the numbers, and the columns don't add up to these total lines. So I'm actually confused about what the totals are referring to, because it's not the totals of the columns.
So I have that reservation, and I'm also concerned. I did read the email earlier, which goes into more detail, but I'm also concerned about the degree of vetting that has gone into the numbers presented here. And I'm wondering, do you then wish to explore on a line-by-line basis the veracity of the veracity is a bad choice of words, the accuracy of the differences posed here?
No, I don't. I think we've been sort of circling around that and trying to do that. And my perception is that the communication problem that Phil articulated has prevented us from getting those numbers all rationalized. I specifically made a couple of attempts to ask the administration to try to incorporate these proposals in such a way that they could present them so that we could see them in common terms. And that request was essentially declined, is my interpretation of the response. However, I don't feel that, I feel that there are a budget of this scale and a budget that has built-in assumptions like the net zero impact on enrollment of cutting programs, a major fudge factor, that there are enough fudge factors in this budget that I am not going to unnecessarily support cutting programs because of an artificial obstacle that the numbers have not been fully rationalized at this level of detail. If the numbers were bigger, that would be an absolute problem, and it would be a violation of my fiduciary duty as a budget committee member. So, at the level of scale of the disagreements and the lack of time, I'm not willing to be put into a corner that I can't approve something that I think makes sense for the college and its community.
Kevin, the majority proposal, the column total says 6,000.
I'm referring, yeah, let me
clarify. When you add it up, though, it adds up to 950,000. So I don't understand. I don't. This document makes me nervous if I can't figure out what the totals are referring to.
And let me clarify that that the majority proposal that I support is what is spelled out in more detail in email. And I would like to give a chance for a quick clarification from the audience since there's a question here.
Adrian and Rosie will get to your comment
Mr.
next.
Chair, I'm concerned about Phil's ability to participate.
I understand.
I'd like to call the question after this, please.
Okay, yes, thank you.
I just want to explain regarding the totals at the bottom. So there are a whole host of rows that you're not seeing on this file, and those are all the ones where there are where there is 100% agreement between the administration and the majority proposal. And so those totals are derived from the entirety of the proposal. So you're just seeing a portion where there are differences. That's the only piece that you're seeing on this spreadsheet. If you have questions about the other line items, I would be happy to respond to those as well.
But if that were true, then wouldn't you still be able to add up the bottoms of the columns to get the 86 minus the 6 doesn't equal 390? It would still have a net impact of 0.
Mr. Chair, call the question.
Yes. We're going to call the question on
Just
this.
ask the question. We're not going to be allowed to answer the question.
I'll go ahead and second the question.
Okay, it's been seconded. So we're going to have a vote on calling the question then. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Let's count those.
Everybody put their hands up.
Those opposed?
1, 2, 3.
Okay. Motion carries. So then, as to your original motion,
No, this is the motion. So now we have
The amended motion.
I apologize. This is the amended motion.
This is the amendment.
Yes. There was a second. So as to that motion then, the amended motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
You should tell us how you want us to vote, since it's unclear. If you want a voice vote, just be clear when you're saying it, because.
Okay. So to the amended motion, which was, would you like to restate the amended motion?
The amended motion is, the amendment is to modify the administration proposal by the majority proposal.
Okay.
By
Yes.
show of hands.
So once again, those in favor of that amended motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed?
Nay.
I'm abstaining from this set of lack of information on this
Did
information.
you get Phil's vote?
I think you said,
He was an A.
that's what I thought. Okay. So.
With one abstention.
Thank you. All right. Now, you had an original motion, did you not?
Yeah. Call the question.
All right. So once again, we'll call the question for that motion. Anybody want to second that?
Second.
Okay.
You can't call to question your own motion.
That's right.
Okay.
So the question is there any more debate?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I would think so.
You can obviate calling the question by saying, is there any more discussion?
And is there more discussion? Keeping in mind that one of our members has a stop at 7 o'clock and we would like to incorporate him if we can.
But that says that we were going to go till 7:25. So I'm more concerned about the folks. I understand if Phil has a stop at 7, but I don't have a stop at 7, and I would actually like to talk a little bit more before asking for a vote.
Okay. So if we're calling the question then, is there a motion to call the question at this time? I suppose there's no motion, which means discussion continues. Matt?
I think that there's a real thirst for delving into this process earlier. I want to compliment Tony for bringing that point up. And you've long been a champion for the governance system on campus. And I think it's pretty clear that our budget finance subcommittee needs to have more time to work in tandem with our administration to come to a consensus. And that's pretty clear to me. And I think that's pretty clear to everyone in this room. I certainly hope so, at least. I don't see this as a binary, and I abstained for reasons I hope I made clear, that there are some questions in this. And I like the direction, Tony, as you pointed out, that some, in fact, most of it takes. I've never, and I hope I'm wrong, correct me if I am, I have never in my time supported a budget that wasn't a consensus budget. And I want to applaud the administration's work to save the ECE program with minimal cuts, to press pause on the GIS program. But there is a social cost to some of these program cuts that I find very difficult to swallow. And as it stands, I may be in the minority. I often am. I can't ignore the heartfelt testimony shared with this board. And though it came across as rhetorical, really do want to find out where the data points are in regards to how we actually determine where students go when certain programs go the way of the dodo. In 2002 and 2005, in 2015, when the career technical education programs, auto body and engineering were cut, where did those students go? Did they stay at Lane? So I do want to know that, right? And I'm not calling anyone out, and I'm not questioning the work. I'm not questioning the integrity. I simply have questions, and frankly, too many questions to be in a comfortable position to approve the budget as it is. Historically, I'm going to stick with my guns. I find it very difficult when there's such a social cost attached to cutting programs to support going down that road. I understand that this is the quote drop dead hour. I get that. I understand I may be in the minority. I get that. But that's where this particular board member is coming from.
I think there have been 3 questions now about the accuracy of the impact on enrollment associated and the historical accuracy of enrollment forecasts related to program cuts. And Brian, were you about to volunteer a comment on that?
I can add a few comments to the conversation. The enrollment estimate built into the budget development subcommittee work was unanimously voted on both this year and last year. We voted on a 0% enrollment change. We take in about 30 factors when we look at that. We look at how many students are in high schools, amount of new home construction, availability of programs, unemployment rate. So we spent 2 or 3 sessions as the subcommittee working on an enrollment estimate. We have been, for the past 2 years, overly optimistic as we've seen declines, although small and in single digit, for the last 2 years. To Matt's questions about where do students go, there is the crystal ball element that many folks have mentioned on both sides of the conversation. Here's something we do know. When we were able to reduce electronics, a program that had only less than 10 degrees awarded in a 2-year period. We don't have an exact way of tracking those students, but we do know we've seen a tremendous increase in apprenticeship at the same time. So we reduced an advanced technology program, but apprenticeship is up over 15%. We have very few programs, if any, that are up that high. And so there's a correlation at the department level of growth there.
And do you have any data as to the accuracy historically of enrollment forecasts?
I don't have that readily available. We could look at what the budget subcommittee suggested and where we landed, and get that. I think it's a big crystal ball question. I mean, some years, this year we were at 0%, and we're probably tracking down credit enrollment. I'm going to say 4% down in credit enrollment. So we were off by 4% this year collectively.
Okay, thank you. Tony, did you have a comment?
A couple of folks who may have an answer to a question that was posed, if it would entertain the chair to call on them who are respectfully requesting to be heard.
So we had a motion earlier to allow audience responses. So do you have a particular notion as to who's responding? Are either of you responding to that question?
Yes.
Okay, please.
You can the data isn't in the best form, but the Achieving the Dream group put out data having to do with the average enrollment per student, and in these last few years, and it's gone down by 12%. So the idea that when you eliminate classes is certainly suggested by that data. You know, in physics, we call this the packing problem. You know, you're trying to fill a jar with M&Ms. You can't measure the volume of the M&Ms and fit them in the jar. There's just space. And so when you, that's the situation here. It's been widely talked about. At least I frequently talk to people that said, "Where is the data on this question?" The other analogy is to the typical econ course you take that says, you know, given a demand curve, where do you set the, where do you maximize revenue for setting the rental price? And you never fill the hotel when you maximize the rental price. And what we're doing is we're cutting classes and filling our classes to historical highs. And if that analogy does suggest that we're losing students, we're maximizing the amount of students that mostly part-time faculty teach. So we're really maximizing what we get out of the faculty, but we're not necessarily maximizing market share, which is what most of the money that we get from the Community College Support Fund and property taxes is based on market share. And so it's a good question. The data is suggestive that by cramming classes full and basically eliminating classes so that they're all reach a maximum amount is having the effect that you wonder.
Thank you. Adrian, did you want to address that question also, please?
I did. I wanted to address the process that the Budget Development Subcommittee used to look at enrollment. And as Brian described, there were a very large number of factors that were considered, and this was a process that took several weeks in terms of deliberation of the committee. The projection that there would be a net zero impact on overall enrollment was not based on any program reductions. The subcommittee has not since had any discussion of what the impact on enrollment would be of those program reductions, looking at the aggregate level. I think it's also important to note that when we're talking about the aggregate enrollment at the college, that's very different from program enrollment. So if we see an increase of 15% in electronics, or excuse me, in apprenticeship as a result of a decrease of 100% in electronics when that program was eliminated. We also have to keep in mind that the overall aggregate enrollment decreased by quite a few percentage points at the college aggregate level.
Thank you. So you're saying in summary that even if, for example, overall enrollment were to hold steady at 0% change, That doesn't mean that that the delta wouldn't have been positive had we retained some programs that were cut. Is that accurate? Thank you. Kevin?
I would like to note that the principle in the physics response to that question is, I believe, a very profound principle. And I call it to the board's attention for future consideration that in order to I'm going to state it in a more superficial way, which doesn't get all of it, but the college has had precise financial projections and mushy enrollment projections. And the college has faced enrollment declines, which then drive fiscal declines, which are precisely managed. At a systematic level, to change that, the college has to treat the enrollment factors with the same precision, depth of focus, and care as it treats the dollars and cents. That's like a special case of triple bottom line accounting. Only in this case, they're tightly coupled because the money that the college gets is driven by enrollment. So you can have a precise management of a downward spiral if you're not controlling all the elements in the equations.
Rosie?
Thank you. I'm listening with great care to what I'm hearing, and in all fairness, I find it somewhat illogical and not maybe nearly as profound, Kevin, as you do, because everything is tied to enrollment. We can't be managing precisely fiscally without all those numbers are tied to enrollment. Our reimbursement from the state, our tuition income, our fee income, every piece of revenue practically, with the exception of food service and CML, are a function of enrollment. What is ignored in the focus, the riveted focus on potential lost revenue because of program cuts, is the continued downward march of unemployment in Lane County. Just this morning's paper went down yet another percentage. And also the fact that we keep raising tuition, Kevin. We're raising tuition in this budget another $7 a credit hour. How can anyone not believe that that impacts a person's ability to afford to attend Lane Community College? But that is conveniently set aside because it isn't comfortable to talk about constricting the size of this organization to more align it with its resource base, its current resource base. And we are still, including in this budget proposal, endeavoring to do that on the backs of students. And in my humble opinion, and my humble opinion is just as legitimate as my colleagues, students are voting with their feet. So I don't need to debate you over it. I just mean to illustrate there's more than one way to see this picture.
I just have a brief response, which is, I'm afraid I hear what you're saying, Rosie, and what you're saying about important social factors influencing enrollment is equally profound and fundamental. But we still have this communication gap where you feel that another side is leaving out things that you're concerned about, and the other side feels like you're leaving out the things that they're concerned about. And the real answers for this college community are looking at them all together. And that's going to require a different kind of process. And you know, there may be a deus ex machina of different economic changes or something that save the budget spiral without the college having to come to grips with that. But if the college is going to come to grips with that and command its own positive future, you have to get to both and win-win conversations.
Thank you. So we are fast approaching the end of our time together. And I'm wondering if there are any closing remarks or if we should once again entertain a motion. Susie?
Well, I was going to call for the question, but I am calling for the question.
Okay. I'll second that. So since there's been some time lapse, should we restate the original motion then?
We have to vote on calling the question.
I apologize. Yep. So all those in favor of calling the question?
Aye.
Aye. Why don't we raise our hands except for Phil, who says aye? I think that's unanimous, yes? Okay. All right. So then, as to the original motion, do we want to repeat that since it's been quite some time?
The motion reads as follows. I move that the Lane Community College District Budget Committee approve the 2017-2018 fiscal year proposed budget as adjusted by staff and the Budget Committee for all funds totaling $218,133,874.
And I believe there was a second.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mr. Ormsby?
Yep. Those in favor?
Aye.
Signify by raising your hand. Phil, could you vote verbally, please?
Aye.
Okay. Those opposed? And the motion carries. Thank you. Is there a second motion?
Oh, sorry, there is a second motion, isn't there? I'm willing to make that.
Okay.
I move that the Lane Community College District Budget Committee approve property taxes for the 2017-2018 fiscal year at the rate of 0.6191 per $1,000 of assessed value for the permanent rate tax levy and in the amount of $7,528,000 for the general obligation bond levy.
Second.
And once again, those in favor?
Please. Discussion.
Just ask if there's any discussion. We don't need to talk about it, but
Is there discussion? I apologize. I think I'm trying to move us along a little too quickly here. Any points of discussion on that motion?
Yes, not enough. We need to reform Measure 5. We all know that. Keep up the good work.
Any others? Okay, those in favor?
Aye.
And Phil, could we get your vote verbally, please?
Aye.
Okay, I think that's unanimous. Thank you. Rosie?
Mr. Chair, as Chair of the Lane Community College Board of Education, I want to thank you in particular for your leadership through this very long and thoughtful budget process. I want to assure you that the board itself has tried very, very hard in this process to be as inclusive, to provide as much opportunity for community members, both the campus community and the greater community of Lane County taxpayers and voters, to be heard with respect to the budget. I'm sure we are all internalizing the feedback that has been received through this process about opportunities for changes that the college community might consider going forward. And we certainly, I'm sure, will be open about entertaining any such recommendations that are made to us in the future. So I just want to thank everyone who participated this year on behalf of the Board of Education.
Thank you, Rosie. And I echo your thoughts to our budget committee members, to our board, to our faculty, classified staff, management, administration, and especially the students who have stood in with us through all of this. It's not an easy process, as everyone in this room knows. And I appreciate your presence and your participation. I know I speak for all of us when I say that. Any other comments, concerns, or statements before we adjourn?
Mr. Chair, I would be thrilled to see the work of the governance system continued to be supported by this college, and the work within the Budget Finance Subcommittee in particular to be a starting point for future conversations. Rather than be reactionary, I would like this to be the launching point for further collaboration, please.
I think Phil made such a suggestion or offer as well earlier.
Comment? Yes. I want to just say how much I appreciate all the level of dedication by the budget committee, by the board, and in particular by the students and faculty and staff here on campus. Your words and your protests and your conversations made this difficult decision much more difficult, and brought a lot more consideration forward. I know I dived much more deeply personally into the budget because of your dedication. So I just want to say thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I'd just like to do one last comment based off of process. I would love if, now that I know I'm going to be here next year, if so if we could have even the process brought to us at a future meeting, just, these are the meetings, these are who will be at the meetings. This is, we have to do this at University of Oregon for our board and bring forward for our tuition setting process, which sometimes goes awry, what, the exact process is, and kind of get that signed off on by the board. And so I think that same type of structure here might be helpful to have.
Thanks. That's a great idea. Susie, did you have a?
Just in addition to the comments that have been made, I would like to just say a little bit about the communication. And I think it would be really helpful to know that when an email is sent where it's appropriate, either to the board or to the budget committee at large, that's shared with an entire group as opposed to just us exclusively. I think that makes it really difficult when we've received information that doesn't include,
all the voices.
Thank you.
There must be a portal or a SharePoint site or something that we could use to make that information more widely available.
Yeah, it just
It's a budget log.
helps with the discussion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
We're adjourned.
Once again, thank you all so much. We're adjourned.